One thing that I've been trying to do more of this year is to take advantage of some of the herbs that are growing wild right in the backyard. I started doing this just a little bit last year, but this year I really wanted to make sure that I didn't miss out on the chance to use some of these wild plants, like violets, dandelion, and plantain, by harvesting them and drying them so that I can have them available to use in the winter months when nothing much is growing outside. I know some people call these plants weeds, but when you start doing more research about them, you find that these three plants are really all very useful herbs. And I love the fact that they're just growing right out in the yard for free, and that God provided such an abundance of these wild herbs that I didn't have to do any work to plant or even to maintain. I should mention, of course, that anytime you harvest a wild plant, you want to make sure to do your own research and make sure you're correctly identifying any plant that you harvest. And you also want to make sure that it's a plant that's a good fit for you and your body, and check with a medical professional if you have any health conditions, or if you're taking any medications, or if you're pregnant or nursing, because sometimes herbs can have contraindications with those things. I harvested several violet leaves this time, and a smaller amount of dandelion and plantain leaves. And once I bring them inside, I like to wash them to get the dirt off of them. Even though these were growing inside my garden in a clean place where I know they haven't been sprayed with any chemicals, I still like to just give them a quick rinse. The herbs that are growing low to the ground tend to get dirty on the underside when it rains and the dirt splashes up on them, so I like to just rinse off all of that sandy dirt that sticks to them. I'll be harvesting my herbs in batches throughout the season because I only have so much space in my dehydrator for drying them. This is my first year using a dehydrator, and so far I'm loving having it during the harvest season. I've always just dried my herbs the old-fashioned way by air drying them, and I still do that for many of the herbs that I harvest. But I always end up running out of space to dry all of the herbs that I want to dry. And sometimes air drying can be more inconvenient too for individual leaves like these violet leaves that I'm gathering, because they can't just be easily hung in bundles like other herbs can be. Using the dehydrator also allows me to dry more herbs in a shorter amount of time, while saving on some space because I can stack the trays on top of each other. It also helps with the drying process too when it's really humid out in the summer, because air drying can be more challenging when you have herbs with a higher moisture content and humid weather at the same time. If you don't have a dehydrator though, you can definitely still dry herbs without one. For herbs with long stems, you can hang them in bunches in a place that gets good airflow and is out of direct sunlight. And for individual leaves, you can lay them out on trays or even on paper towels to dry. And whether you choose to air dry your herbs or to use a dehydrator or to use some of both, the main thing you want to do is just to make sure that they're fully dry before you put them anywhere to store them, because if they aren't fully dry, then they could get moldy. I have some violet leaves from a previous harvest that I had already finished drying, so I'm going to put those in a jar for storage while I wait for these other herbs to dry. It's hard to give an exact number for how many hours or days the herbs will take to dry, because it really all depends on how much moisture is in the herbs to begin with, and also how humid or dry your house is. But you just want to make sure that the herbs feel crisp to the touch, like really dry, brown autumn leaves, and you should hear sort of a crackling sound when you crumble them up. And once your leaves are completely dry, then you can crumble them and store them in a glass mason jar, or in an old empty spice bottle, or some other container like that. And then you definitely want to make sure to label your jar with the type of herb you used as well as the date. Once they're dry, a lot of the herbs tend to look pretty similar, so unless you have an herb with a really distinctive look or a smell to it, then it can be really easy to get them confused later on. And it's always a good idea to include the date too, so you know how old they are for the future. Well, thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you again next time.